This has never happened before. We've got 4 episodes left, and I see so much potential. We need to savor this moment. I guess I'm getting my hopes up. I don't want to set expectations too high, but the show is getting better every episode.
Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan.
Welcome, everyone, to Krypton to Alderaan. I'm Joey, your Star Wars lover, and with me is Royish Goodlooks, your Star Wars song guy.
Hello, Joey. Hello, podcast.
Hello, and we're the podcast that analyzes nerdy pop culture, but it's mostly Star Wars. And this episode, we will be discussing Skeleton Crew Episode 4.
Can't say I remember no at-atting.
But
No.
first,
Come on,
hey, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. We will be riding out Skeleton Crew for the rest of the season. We are halfway through the season. If you would like to join us along this crazy ride and see where our opinions lie at the end of it, hit that subscribe button and come back for more. We'd really appreciate it. And that's enough of that. Let's punch it. Wow. So, episode 4, we are officially halfway through. So, Royce, let's do our vibe check. How are you feeling after episode 4? Can't say I remember no at-atin.
Joey, I'm always excited to podcast with you, but this was one of those rare occasions where the episode ended and I was like, I got to text Joey right away. And I saw that you had texted me at like 9:19. And so I went into my calculator app and I was like, what's 38 minutes from now? It was like 9:57. I was like, okay, I'll text Joey at 9:57. What did you think of the episode?
That's so funny.
Because I had finished it a little before you. So what I will say, the runtime, still a little short. We are below the average overall, but we're on trend. We should be getting longer and longer episodes here on out. But this time, dude, it did not matter. The pacing of this episode was so satisfying. Overall, I love the episode. Dare I say, a perfect episode in my humble opinion. I love the post-apocalyptic setting, the ruins, the destruction. That always hooks me in. And the survivor warrior plotline was really cool, especially from the kids' point of view. It reminded me a lot of my favorites, kind of smashed together. The Postman.
I was going to say.
I got a lot of those vibes. And even, like, this is, Joey, this is going to go all over. The Postman meets Enemy at the Gates meets Falling Skies.
Oh, dope. Oh, man, it's been a long time since I've thought of Falling Skies. Yeah, with a little bit of maybe some Shakespearean stuff thrown in there as well. These two, like, rival families or rival tribes that might not necessarily be able to remember why they're fighting in the first place, but they're just fighting. I really enjoyed bringing that kind of aspect or trope into Star Wars as well. And the meeting of, you know, the off-worlders with the on-worlders, not necessarily understanding the way each other lives, but being open to learning about the way each other lives and each of them making an impact on the other. Just a super, super special episode of Star Wars and of television overall, I think. I feel very much the same way. Maybe in retrospect, I would call it perfect. Absolutely perfect. But starting out, the episode started in a way where I was a little bit disappointed. I was getting a little bit like, oh man, I really don't want this episode to be bad. It took a little bit for it to hook me, but not that long. I wasn't sure I was going to vibe with like the bit when Wim is like, oh, are you kids battling the adults on the planet for control of the planet? And I know that that's like very fun and silly and whatever. It didn't feel like that plotline was going to be substantive. And then it turned into the most substantive episode of Star Wars that I have seen in a very long time. So extremely pleasantly surprised, extremely excited to see where it goes. It was fun. It was beautiful. It was heartwarming. I teared up. I teared down. It was just amazing. The character development, the lore, all of it was great.
You always say oh, I'm going to return to my favorite episodes of Clone Wars because I know the feeling that they give me. And I know the feeling that this episode and specific scenes from this episode gave me. I don't always return to Star Wars in the same way that you've described, that sometimes you return to the Clone Wars. But if I ever did, this episode is that for me.
Oh, that's incredible. That's very special. That makes me love this episode even more, that someone else could feel that way about this, a feeling that I have known about Star Wars. I'm excited that this is that for you. I'm very curious as to what hit for you so hard in this episode.
I'm going to let you steal all the Neel attention. I hope you got more to say about him. But that was really the icing on the cake for me. It hit for me on like the philosophy levels. You're saying the two rival clans, why are you fighting? Neel unraveled that perfectly and left some breadcrumbs for that warrior princess. I'm from the weak clan. You probably shouldn't listen to me. Earns the kiss from the warrior princess at the very end. Perfect.
Yeah. This was a Neel episode, and the character development that took place, not even for Neel, he is the Hurley, he's the conscience of the group, and he's going out in the galaxy as a kid and promoting growth and promoting peace. This is the stuff we need to be seeing on television, and this is the stuff that I love to see in Star Wars. One of my favorite episodes or series of episodes in the Clone Wars is when Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka are training Saw Gerrera to be the warrior that we see Saw Gerrera become, and the rebel and the insurgent that he becomes. This episode of Skeleton Crew is the exact opposite episode, where Neel is going to this warring clan and teaching them how to incorporate peace and reach for peace. And he says, if it was just me, I would just apologize and try to live together happily. But you probably shouldn't listen to me because I'm from the weak clan, which is what she said.
He didn't even fight her on that.
Right. Whenever someone he respects says something, he repeats it. It gets into him, which could be dangerous. But in this case, he got to her. He opened up her heart to the point where at the end, she says, hopefully when I'm in charge of the clan, I will remember your ways. He changed that planet. I don't care if we never see at Akron again. In my head, Haina becomes the leader, and then she brokers peace with the other clan based on her interactions with Neel.
The show is getting better every episode, and I think that's the most ideal way to design a show. You know, you learn more about the characters and you buy into them further and further and further. It's tough on other series when like you can't quite crack how you're supposed to feel about somebody in the show. They're doing it much more succinctly in Skeleton Crew. And Neel is a standout, much more than Wim, who you would kind of think would be like the cliche lead. Yeah, I was surprised that like Wim wasn't really in the forefront. And like you said at the beginning, Wim saying like, are you kids trying to overthrow the adults? It's silly, but that's like, that is his character. It's perfect because he's read all these crazy stories. Is it 1,000 years later, just like that story I read? This show, I think what's really great though is a lot of Star Wars is reduced to like good and evil. You know, the Jedi versus the Sith, the dark side and the light side. And this episode has a little bit of that, but it reframes the kind of core Star Wars concept of good versus evil as kids versus adults, and like capability versus like incapability, or, you know, maybe there's a better way to put it than that. But I think that's just such a fun way to explore the Star Wars universe, because the kids are really confident and they get in over their heads and they're like, oh no, we shouldn't have done this. But then they still work it out in the end. Especially with a character like Neel, he's a lover, not a fighter, but he throws a rock at the end. You know, they didn't give him a blaster. I love the scene he puts down the blaster. Hanya's like, you're not going to go with them? No, I don't think so. And she's like, you're very wise. But she thinks that he wants a better weapon, you know, but he's just like, no, I'm not going to fight.
Yeah, that whole series of things was incredible. And then she takes him up to the roof. She's like, get your daily ration, because they're rationing things because they're at war. And he gives away his food. When he puts that blaster down is the moment that the episode changes completely. Literally, the kids run away with the weapons and Neel takes over. That was when the episode changed. That's also another moment that really kind of had me choked up, that felt very emotionally impactful, that felt like a very great character moment. He gives away his food. It's just extremely emotional. Fern admitting that she doesn't know what she's doing when they find the coordinates have been erased by SM-33, and she's tearing up we haven't seen her vulnerable at all in this show. Maybe a little bit when they're on the pirate port, but her admitting that she doesn't know what she's doing, she's taking full responsibility. I mean, she's being a captain in that moment more than any other moment where she is taking full responsibility. And I kind of like that she pushes back on Wim in that moment. Like, he is trying to be optimist, and he is going with kind of like a Star Wars status quo of, you're amazing. I wouldn't have been able to get us this far. And she's like, okay, well, saying that does not help us in the situation. Saying that does not help me make a decision. Saying you're awesome, now go make a decision, is not the way this works. And that is like, wow, yes.
Yeah, I'm a little worried that like the main cast being kids is going to suffer the sort of Bad Batch thing of like, oh, it's a kid's show. And that's fair if it doesn't connect with you. But this is so real. I love that connection. Seeing Fern break down, who hasn't been there? Where you're like, I thought I knew what I was doing today, and I don't. Like I said, Joey, when the episode ended, I was just dying to talk to you about it. We started today's podcast by saying, hey, maybe this was a perfect episode. And that's a special thing when that happens because it's so rare. You and I are agreeing. We'll see the YouTube stats if people agree there. But we need to savor this moment. And I really hope the show also continues this as well. Like you said, this episode gets the mid-season. Maybe I have some kind of high expectations. I'm hoping it delivers. And this was above expectation. Below runtime average, but above expectation as far as the quality.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very excited that we both think this was kind of the perfect episode of Star Wars. Not even kind of, that this was a perfect episode of Star Wars television. Did anyone think this show was going to go in this direction? It pulled the rug out from underneath us. They are on a mission. They are trying to get home. They go to this planet. It looks like a post-apocalyptic version of their planet. And then the episode, what was turning me off again was like the episode was not about the mission. And I didn't want to hear people say, oh, it's filler. It's a filler. You know, why are they making a filler episode with only 8 episodes? It delivered on something that was much more special, that I fell in love with much more than their mission, than an episode that would have been about the mission.
Well said. It was the opposite of the monster of the week, of the filler episode. It was all character. And funny enough, like it didn't have any pew-pews, or action. They land on the planet and they're just kind of marching around. The action at the end, I could talk a little bit about the SM-33 scene because that maybe was a little weird with the filmography for me. It worked on like the horror level. It was very scary when they attached the camera to like the motion, whatever that technique is.
I loved that.
The filmography there you love?
Yes, I really do. Yep, I loved it. It's very new to Star Wars.
It's powerful. They do that every now and then with like the ships. The ships will like land on a planet and the camera is like on the ship or whatever. So I get that. But yeah, no real action. And that's kind of the cool part too, is they were like marching the kids like into battle and they're worried that they're going to actually have to fight, and they don't actually have to fight in this episode to learn the lesson.
Oh, that's so interesting to think about, that they do not battle when they meet Hana and her father. They're constantly talking about battle. You need to prove yourselves in battle before we take you to the fallen sanctum. And they never battle until the end when it's one of their own crewmates that betrays them. And that's the one time Neel like kind of takes up arms to fight one of his own crewmates.
Dude, it's the postman, the one who didn't want to fight.
I should have found a way to kill you.
Perfect. Man, yeah, I would love to know if the people who wrote this episode were fans of the Postman.
I mean, and like, okay, we can backtrack. Falling Skies, they hide out in a school and the kids are the warriors and the leader is the philosopher or the historian, and he's taking lessons from history and philosophy rather than his skills as a warrior. Oh, you're Captain Fern? You must be soldiers. No.
Yeah, the definitions of terms on this planet to these people were also very interesting. Yes, captain, you must be a soldier, weak. These kids are experiencing different people in the galaxy when they didn't even know there were 1,000 worlds in the galaxy. I'm wondering if moments like this will turn the kids away from thinking that At-Aten is this like boring, controlled place and be more like, oh, the galaxy is a bit rough and maybe it's not so bad here on At-Aten. Maybe what we've got here is pretty good compared to the other things we've seen out in the galaxy. Maybe we should even keep it hidden. Maybe we shouldn't reveal ourselves to the rest of the galaxy because we have it pretty good here.
This has never happened before. As far as I can remember, we've got 4 episodes left, and I see so much potential. You know, I was thinking, like, I want to see Wim Jedi train with Jod, and maybe they're doing this treasure mystery story, but, like, who cares if they find the treasure at the end of the day? It's the friends
Right.
you make along the adventure. And, we were talking about Bad Batch and Omega last week, and I said, I don't know if there's an Omega on this show. But this week, I could kind of see that a little bit in a couple of the characters, obviously in Neel, and a little bit with Wim with his pep talk to Fern. But then also, like, every episode of Bad Batch, they meet more kids, and we're always like, oh, are they going to come along? And they never do. And so I kind of like that for another Star Wars poetry moment of, like, yeah, the skeleton crew meeting all these different worlds and realizing that, you know, everybody has their own struggles and kind of helping them all out along the way. And there's still 4 more episodes left to expand on all of that stuff. And that is also rare in Star Wars. We're like, are they going to stick the landing? Next week's the finale. I hope they don't. Who knows? I guess I'm getting my hopes up. I don't want to set expectations too high, but I was thoroughly impressed with this episode.
Yep, 100%. I think we, need to normalize getting our hopes up. I don't think we should push our hopes down just so that we're not disappointed later. We both thought this episode was perfect. I loved almost every minute of it. I'm okay with having my hopes up based on this episode. One good moment is enough for me to put my complete faith in this because I want to have faith in Star Wars and I want to keep my hope up. Have you ever been more excited to only have 4 episodes of a show left? Like, I know that's a weird way to say that, but I'm so excited for the next 4 episodes.
All right, listeners, let's keep this conversation going. We would love to hear from you. Leave your comments here on YouTube and make sure to subscribe and tune in next time for more nerdy pop culture, but mostly Star Wars. Thanks for listening to the show today. I've been Royce.
You know what? I've been Neel again because he's just perfect.
And we've been Krypton to
Akron. Because can't say I remember no, ask Aten.